Coming up this week on episode 18.
Hi, this is Brian Stillman, the director of Plastic Galaxy, the story of Star Wars toys, and I am skywalking through Neverland. Check it out.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
Ladies, listen.
A billion years in the making.
Off to Neverland.
What do you know?
You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll kiss $3 goodbye.
Hey, Skywalkers! Welcome back to Skywalking Through Neverland. This is Richard, and over here is my sweetie, Sarah.
Hi, everyone.
Also known as
Jedi Tink.
That's very important.
Yes, we are the husband and wife team who love to talk Star Wars and Disney and anything else in pop culture fandom. Available on iTunes, YouTube, on our website, and now on Stitcher Radio.
On today's show, we're going to be talking to Brian Stillman about his new docu-fan film, Plastic Galaxy, the story of Star Wars toys. This was one of my favorite interviews. I know that your big thing was Tinkerbell. It was your big favorite. But
Margaret Carey was 2 episodes back. So exciting.
But talking to someone who just made a documentary on Kenner Star Wars toys, oh my goodness. Then we talked to Sean Crosby, or you may know him as Obi-Sean, about growing up and customizing your own Star Wars toys.
Yeah, Obi-Sean Kenobi goes around all the convention circuits with his Yoda puppet.
Conventions and charity events.
Yes, absolutely.
That's very important because he's very big into the charity events around Los Angeles and all over the country, if not the world.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited, sweetie.
I'm excited too because this week we have our very first sponsor.
Very first podcast sponsor, Autumn Barnes. She is the official Skywalking Through Neverland Disney vacation planner.
Now, if you're going to Disney World or Disneyland, you want an authorized Disney vacation planner.
Yes, because
there's just so much to know when booking a vacation.
Yeah, especially if you're going to Disney World with like 4 theme parks and fast passes and reservations to navigate. So she will do that all for you.
I love the fact that she says she will plan your vacation with white glove concierge service.
A little nod to Mickey there.
There you go.
Well, yeah, she'll also plan vacations for Disneyland, Aulani in Hawaii, Disney Hilton Head, Disney Vero Beach, or Disney Cruise Line vacations. And she'll save you money as well.
There's so much to know before you go, so let her guide you through an amazing vacation.
You can find the link to her Facebook page, which has tons and tons of information, on our website, skywalkingthroughneverland.com. And
then mention you heard about her through Skywalking Through Neverland.
Absolutely. She'll know exactly what you're talking about because she's a listener.
Hey, Autumn.
And last week we told you about our day at Disneyland when they had a sing-along screening of Beauty and the Beast. Well, this week they continued their annual pass holder sing-along screenings with The Little Mermaid. And of course we had to go. And this time we brought our good friend, birthday girl, and fellow redhead Denise with us.
Fellow redhead? I'm not a redhead.
You're not a redhead.
The last time we did a show, you weren't a redhead.
No, but you know what?
What?
I decided to go red.
She turned Ariel.
I did. It was very exciting.
So suffice to say, I felt very left out. 2 redheads and a blonde.
We were making lots of blonde jokes.
Meh. Well, sweetie, you look very nice as a redhead.
Oh, thank you.
And now here's what happened at the Little Mermaid screening last week at Disneyland.
I ended up seeing Little Mermaid. I was 8 when it came out, so I was in the theater.
I don't think I saw it until it was on DVD.
Wow.
It was even more fun watching it with a crowd of people that were diehard Little Mermaid fans, and most of them were adults.
Yeah.
And they're all doing the dialogue along with the movie.
Yeah, it wasn't just a sing-along. It was sort of a talk-along, and a lot of it was like...
Yeah, well, Sebastian and Ursula particularly are very fun to say their lines.
To mimic them, because the voices and the cadence. And
exactly.
Yeah.
Was there anything that you didn't remember when you saw it tonight? Like, oh yeah, I forgot about that part.
Oh, there was a lot of stuff because I thought, God, it's been a really long time since I've seen that. I mean, that I played her for so long, but then you did it along with the...
You played her where?
At birthday parties,
Okay.
special
You
events.
dressed up. Yeah.
Dressed up.
Yay.
That's the one you really connected to because you had the big flowing red hair.
She is my favorite because I am the mermaid. I still have the flowing red
You do.
hair. Still have my mermaid hair. Don't have my mermaid figure, but I still have my mermaid hair. And but there was a lot of stuff in the movie that I didn't remember at all. I had kind of forgotten that King Triton at the end steps in and substitutes
Takes
himself
Ariel's
to try
place.
to take Ariel's place until it was getting right there, and I thought, oh, this is coming. I forgot about that.
What I found interesting after seeing Frozen and then going back to this movie was the fact that in Frozen, the girl saves herself. Whereas in this movie, it was the classic Prince saves the day. And I just found that interesting watching that after having seen the updated versions of like Frozen or Tangled.
But there was some crossover because she was one of the first princesses that was kind of gutsy and strong and sort of spoke her own.
Strong-willed.
It wasn't just like,
She was very independent.
yeah, and running from sharks.
That shark was pretty scary.
He was.
When his jaws clamped, it's
Yeah,
like the whole
this
screen
big,
shook.
Giant. Oh, I didn't
There's-
notice that.
yeah.
Well, I noticed the sound is very
Yeah.
clangy and yeah.
And it was fun before the movie. We went on the Little Mermaid ride at California Adventure.
Yeah, that totally got us in the mood. What made the day kind of special for me is the fact that I just had my hair dyed red for the first time.
It's blazing red.
Last night. So, and I wear my Ariel shirt.
She had her Ariel shirt
and
on.
I had my red hair, and I felt very, very akin to Ariel. And it's fun.
It was a good shirt, too, because lots of little girls were pointing it out.
And then we tried to get you up on stage because in order to rally the crowd for the whole movie, there was an MC who
Did some
asked,
trivia.
did some trivia questions for the whole audience, and then brought up 6 little kids.
We asked for 6 volunteers.
Yes, for 6 volunteers.
And we kept telling,
And I was the first one to jump up
we
to
were
my
yelling,
feet and
over
yell,
here,
"Pick
it's
me,
Denise's birthday,
pick
it's
me."
Denise's birthday.
Yeah, and we got all the people
And the
around
crowd
us.
around us, very, very
to-
lively bunch.
Yeah, to point to her.
And they all
be like,
did.
Come on, come on.
And I didn't even see the MC acknowledge. He was just looking at the kids in the front row.
Yeah,
He did the big.
and
not
we were
looking at
making
the
a noise.
grown-up
He could
thing.
hear us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a little age racism going on there.
Yeah.
It was.
Meh.
I should have said, "Hey, pick me, you." I didn't though.
That crowd was very
Raucous.
Our section was very, very
Raucous?
Yeah.
Yes.
The guys next to me, whenever we saw the birds, would go into the
Yeah, I thought that
Little
was
Nemo. The mine.
Yeah.
Mine.
Oh, the seagulls.
That's a fun crossover.
That was really funny.
Mine.
So whenever you saw a bird, when you
seagull.
saw Ariel,
Yeah.
you'd go, oh.
You saw Scuttle. They would go, mine.
When you saw Ariel, they'd go. The
Oh.
MC would tell everyone to go, oh.
Yes.
When you saw Eric, he would tell everyone to
Cheer.
cheer. When you saw Ursula, you got to boo. And when you saw the birds, the seagulls, you got to do like these flapping motions with your with your arms.
So funny.
all in all, a very fun night. And if anyone is out in the Southern California area, next week, which is the 19th and the 20th,
Right.
they'll be playing Aladdin.
Yes.
So there you go. There is our review wrap up with our special friend Denise. Thank you, Denise, for spending your birthday with us.
I don't know when,
I don't know how.
but I know something's starting right now. Watch and you'll see. Someday I'll be part of that world.
Be our guest, put our service to the test. Tie your napkin, man your necessary, and we'll provide the rest. To please your hot hors d'oeuvres.
I am very excited today. We are talking to Brian Stillman, the director of Plastic Galaxy, the story of Star Wars toys. Brian, thank you very, very, very much for joining us today on Skywalking Through Neverland.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
I saw this trailer, was it at Celebration 6? And then it was running a lot online.
Yes.
When I saw that, I was just chomping at the bit to see the rest of it because I had not played with, but been obsessed with Star Wars toys ever since I was a kid. And I knew that this was something I couldn't wait to dive into.
Well, that's, Well, I think that's a pretty common theme running through most of the people we spoke to. You know, Star Wars was such a huge part of their lives, both the films and the toys. So I'm certainly familiar with that sensation.
Yeah. Did you read John Booth's book, Collect All 21?
Absolutely. You know, reading that book for me, give a little shout out to John here, but reading that book for me was a constant sensation of, I did that. I did that. I did that. Yeah, I did that. Like the sort of the sort of things that seem to touch through all of our lives and all of our experiences with these toys was fascinating to me. You know, the experiences that we all seem to have with them was like this weird kind of like I don't know. Through thread that runs through it all. It was sort of fascinating.
Yeah.
Did you watch the Clone Wars animated series?
I've seen some of them.
Because they would often make references to the Kenner toys. And
yes.
That would just excite the heck out of me. Like they had the walrus man with the orange top and the blue legs.
Mm-hmm.
And they made reference to Admiral Akbar's staff.
I feel so left out now.
Yeah. Sarah was born in 1981, so she came in right in the middle of all this. Now, what is your background as a filmmaker and a journalist? Give us a little background on yourself.
Well, I've been I was a magazine editor and writer for, something like 15, 16 years. Used to work for some major magazines in the city. And then a few years ago, decided to kind of get out of print and move into more broadcast journalism and documentary making. So I do a lot of stuff in those fields. Lots of day-to-day hard news type stuff like, hey, look, the building's on fire. Go cover it. But also lots of profiles of artists or interesting things going on. I live in New York City, so there's always kind of something going on and something to kind of point your camera at. And then I've done some documentary work as well. I did a movie a few years ago called Toys R Us, Revolution in Plastic, which was a movie about the designer toy scene and vinyl, urban vinyl, stuff like that.
So your background really isn't on toy documentaries.
Well, you know, that it's funny.
So.
It just sort of turned out that way for these first two movies, but I actually we're starting to put together some ideas, some friends and I, for some projects we might want to work on in the future, and none of them involve toys. So, well, you know, it's hard to get a lot of, you look at the toy and you say, can you give me more of that? And they just sort of stare at you blankly with these dead eyes. And, it's time to move on to like real human beings, I think.
It's amazing how much accepted toys are these days. Now the toy sections are just filled with adults looking for stuff for themselves.
Well, it's funny. I've talked about this with friends before. This idea that people my age, I'm 38, people my age, we grew up in toy culture in a way that our parents didn't, and certainly their parents couldn't even really think about.
Right.
And what's also really interesting is you see it in the people making the toys. A lot of the toy designers working in the 70s, the 60s, the 50s were industrial designers who sort of fell into the toy world because it was a gig. And some of them got into it because they loved toys, certainly, but so many of them that I've spoken to were like, yeah, I wanted to design cars, or I wanted to design this or that, and this is where the jobs were, and then they would sort of grow to love it. Well, people getting into toys today, because they grew up with them, they can think in terms of, I want to design toys. That's what I want to do when I grow up. And I think that's really cool. So you see the kind of attitude behind the toys transforming as well. So it's really pretty interesting.
Yeah.
How did you come up with the idea for Plastic Galaxy?
A few years ago, maybe 5 years ago or so, I was in the store in New York called Love Saves the Day. And they're not there anymore. But they were this great sort of vintage everything shop. So they'd have toys and they'd have clothes and they'd have weird bits of like, if something had Evel Knievel on it, they had it, that type of stuff. And they had this awesome display of Star Wars figures, the first 12 figures on the display stand. And then they also had all these boxed ships and all these, like, just all sorts of other stuff. And for whatever reason, seeing it at that moment, even though I'd seen it, dozens of times before, really clicked in my head. And over the next sort of few months, I found myself being more and more interested in kind of buying these toys again. And I'm the type of person who, when I collect, I really like to learn the history of what I'm collecting. I like to know the background and the stories and the kind of why and wherefore of it all. And so I found all these books. Sansweet's book, From Concept to Screen Collectible, was huge in terms of providing insight into the hobby. And I read all these websites, and I figured somebody had to have made this movie already. It had been more than 30 years, and I assumed it had been done. And I went looking, and obviously I couldn't find anything. I said, well, I guess if nobody else has done it, I don't know, I'm looking for a new project, and I want to learn as much about these toys as possible, so I don't know, maybe I'll do it. And then I just started digging into it and decided it would be a fun thing to do and a great way to learn about these toys. And sort of spiraled from there. Yeah,
we're so glad that you did, too. And you had raised money on Kickstarter, right?
Yeah, we started off working on the movie. It was myself, and then I also had a friend helping me. And I was paying everything out of pocket. So our first couple big shoots, we went to Ohio for something like 14 days. We went to Seattle and the surrounding areas for 10 days, like really long shoots to get all these people. I was paying for that out of pocket. And after a while, I was like, this is becoming difficult. So why don't I see maybe this Kickstarter thing will help out a little bit? And it went way past where I ever thought it would.
How much did you end up raising?
The final tally, if I remember correctly, was about $9,000, maybe more than that. But then, of course, we gave away T-shirts as part of the Kickstarter thing.
Right.
So after we purchased those, it still left us with a pretty big chunk of cash. It ended up funding about maybe not quite half the film. So maybe like, 40% of the film was funded by Kickstarter.
So you said that you had gotten more than you'd asked for. How much were you asking for?
I didn't have any idea how this thing would do. And I knew that the rules of Kickstarter are if you don't get all your funding, you don't get anything.
Right.
Good strategy.
So I set it really low. I set it at $3,000. And I said, if I get that much, that'll be enough to take some of the pressure off. And, we'll see where it goes.
3,000? And I'm sure you would have gotten that the first day.
We actually did.
Nice.
Which mostly says how low it was, more than anything else. But it was nice. The biggest benefit of Kickstarter, though, and the one I really didn't see coming, was the promotional value. Because there are people out there, journalists, who just check Kickstarter all the time and plug in keywords to see what might pop up. And I guess, unsurprisingly, Star Wars is a pretty powerful keyword, or pair of keywords. And what ended up happening was, randomly, I was getting contacted by journalists and bloggers and podcasters to talk about the film. And it was not something I ever imagined happening. I didn't see this as something that could have that kind of effect. And that helped just as much as the funding.
Sure.
Awesome.
How did you find so many ex-Kenner designers and toy makers who still had never used concepts?
Yeah, my friend was a consulting producer on the film, and he helped answer a lot of questions that set up the framework that I could sort of start building this thing on. His name is John Alvarez, and he introduced me to Gus Lopez. And for anyone out there who doesn't know who Gus is one of the foremost Star Wars collectors probably in the world. Everything from toys to prototypes to actual props and pieces from the movies. He owns the Death Star, and he's in our film. And if you actually look right behind him in his interviews, there is what looks like a model of the Death Star. Well, that's it. That's the thing that's hanging in the shots in Star Wars.
Oh my gosh.
So Gus was able to help introduce me to a few Kenner people. And then from there, they were able to help me meet a few other Kenner people. And then a few other people I spoke to knew some people and could help kind of arrange things. One of the guys in the film, his name is Chris Fossett. His uncle is a former Kenner designer named Tom Beaumont. So he was able to help connect me to him. So it all kind of spreads out as you meet people. Some of them did save a lot of stuff. So for instance, there are a couple times in the film where a former preliminary designer named Tom Troy is showing off stuff that he worked on. So the things leading up to the droid factory, drawings leading up to the troop transport. And he kept those because, like any working designer and artist, when you move on, you keep your portfolio. You want to be able to show your work to future employers. So they all kind of did that. They all kind of held on to a few things. But a lot of the stuff, the concept drawings and things like that, were actually in the hands of collectors, because a lot of that stuff got tossed by Kenner, and collectors were able to literally dumpster dive to rescue some of that stuff. And then there was a whole group of collectors who managed to track down Kenner employees, former Kenner employees, and that's where a lot of the prototypes and stuff came from. They would find these people, visit their house, talk to them, and then see if they were interested in selling any of these things that they kind of kept from work. Because back then, you could take a sculpt home with you. You could take a prototype home with you. The sense of intellectual property wasn't quite the same as it is today. And a lot of these things, the designers would bring them home to give them to their kids or whatever. And then over the years, they just held on to it all. You know, it's sort of amazing. You know, I got a lot of interesting stories that I'm not really at liberty to repeat. When the camera was off, I got to hear a lot of these sort of adventures that they had to find some of this stuff. And
yeah, like what?
Yeah, can't say. But I will say the legwork that they put in to finding these Kenner people was pretty astounding. And they weren't doing it just to collect things. They were doing it because the opportunity to speak to these people who made these toys, to get all these questions answered and to learn about them, was sort of this phenomenal. It was a phenomenal opportunity they couldn't pass up, even on that level. So it's pretty great. It's why we have so much of the history today.
Yeah. Was there someone you wanted to get or something you wanted to cover, but you couldn't?
Well, George Lucas never returned my calls. Generally, you know, I feel like I was able to get pretty much what I wanted, you know.
Did you ever try contacting any of the kids who were in the commercials or did the modeling for the packages?
Well, they're not listed in the phone book as like hands that appeared on the land speeder box. A lot of the kids who appeared in those boxes were the children of Kenner employees. That's what I've heard. But beyond that, I wouldn't even know how to begin tracking them down.
Yeah. Some of the stuff that you had covered in your film were the wax sculpts of the action figures. And I just can't believe those are still in existence.
Oh, yeah. You know,
wow.
Like I said, you know, it's actually in the extras. There are a number of them shown. You know, it's this situation where the Kenner guys just took them home with them because, you know, they either thought their kids might be into them, or maybe they kind of recognized, well, we're part of this big pop culture phenomenon, so, you know, I want to keep this souvenir. Or maybe it was something they figured, well, maybe one day, you know, I'm going to need to show someone this thing so that I can get another job, you know, as a demonstration of what I've worked on.
Yeah, and the fact that they kept them after 36 years is just astounding. Now, I know what lengths I would go to get one of these originals. What length would you go to get an original wax sculpt?
I mean, you know, there's only so many lengths I can go to realistically, and they're probably not enough. So to make it happen, I mean, these are rare and valuable collectibles now, and I don't think I have enough body parts I could sell.
I'm gonna say that I would do things that I would not be very proud of right now. But
The thing is, a lot of them are in the possession of friends of mine.
Oh,
and
really?
So, I'm happy
You can go visit.
that they've got them.
And who are these friends, and what are their addresses, and the time of days that they're out?
Afraid I can't say.
Now, one of the greatest features on Plastic Galaxy that I just loved was Know Your Toy Lightsaber.
Yeah,
That was so cute.
That is the first and probably last time I will ever put myself on camera.
Now, that was funny. You in the playground losing a hand? That was good stuff. Now, there were so many of these bootleg lightsabers going around, just making a fortune. Why didn't Kenner jump on this any sooner?
Well, I mean, you got to sort of put it in perspective. There's one bootleg lightsaber going around that was being remade over and over again every time the lawyers kind of caught up with them. So, the lightsaber I show in that is the very first one is the bootleg saber, and it's called the Force lightsaber. But it was actually called, the Force beam lightsaber. But they also made the light beam lightsaber and all these other things. And they kept sort of tweaking the name and tweaking the sticker, but it was very obvious what was going on. And it was always the same company. And, Kenner had a lightsaber out in, 78? The inflatable lightsaber came out. So they jumped on it pretty quickly, to be honest. There's time. It takes time to develop these things if you're going to do them for real instead of as just this kind of cheesy bootleg thing. So if you figure they signed the deal for Star Wars a month before the movie came out, so that's April, and it takes, it can take a year to develop a toy, and you don't know how big it's going to be anyway, so you don't start developing it right away.
I gotta be honest, as a kid, I wanted everything of Star Wars, but when I saw those yellow inflatable lightsabers, I passed on those for the Force beam.
I had one as a kid. I loved it. I knew it was a little weird. I knew there was something wrong when I'd swing it and the blade would bend. And, I was young, but I wasn't so young that didn't occur to me as something's not quite right here. But it's all I had.
Whereas the Force beam, when you hit something, the blade would just instantly snap off, and after 4 or 5 times, it would just break.
Aww.
But what do you expect for $1.99?
You boys and your fighting.
Yeah, and you girls in your dresses.
Our Barbie dolls.
Now,
I don't know. The girls I know would be the girls in their fighting. So,
did Plastic Galaxy start more as a fan film?
Well, it is a fan film. I'm a fan.
Yeah.
It's funny. I think people might be under the mistaken impression that X-Ray Films is some real production company, but it's just me, pretty much. This is kind of guerrilla level documentary making. It's grab a camera, get some lights, get some microphones, and go. And if people think there's sort of more of a machine behind it, then I appreciate that, because that means I did my job well. This was very much a fan film.
Yeah, the fact that you can sell it kind of puts you above the fan film level. What kind of rights did you have to get to use the Kenner toys?
You don't have to. I mean, the fair use rules are pretty clear. This is a work of journalism. I'm commenting on these things. So, and these are toys that I own. What I can't do is incorporate them into the official Plastic Galaxy logo. You know what I mean? So our logo is this kind of tombstone-shaped thing with letters, and it harkens back to some of the old Kenner display signs. And if I included a picture of Darth Vader's head in it, whether it's Darth Vader or the Kenner version of Darth Vader, that would be a problem.
What about on your DVD cover? You have all the action figures right above the logo.
But they're not part of the logo.
Oh,
that's just an image. That's photos of the toys. Our logo itself is just that tombstone thing. I consult with lawyers. I consult with other producers, and you try and say, well, where is the line where we're accidentally infringing on someone's intellectual property? And you then back away from it as quickly as possible. We made a number of decisions that were probably more conservative than they needed to be in terms of what we used, because the attitude was, well, better safe than sorry.
Now, before we wrap this up, we would love for you to take the vintage Kenner quiz.
Man, and
yes,
here we go. I'm gonna look. I'm sure my score will be pretty sad, but go ahead.
Well, so what we're gonna do for the first part of it, we're gonna play you a sound effect, and you have to tell us what toy the sound effect comes from.
Oh, man. Okay. I want to just say at the outset, though, for anyone listening to this, I want to put my excuses out there now. My interest as a collector is really in the first wave of Star Wars stuff.
Which is why we called it the vintage Kenner quiz.
Well, all right, hit me. So that's either the X-Wing, I'm guessing either the X-Wing or the TIE Fighter. I mean, that sounds like the horrible little thing vibrating against the little reed, which is what they used for sounds back then. Am I close?
Well, you gave us two answers. Gotta give us one.
Well, okay, I'll go with the X-Wing because I like it more than TIE Fighter.
You should have guessed Vader TIE Fighter.
Oh man, I should have gone with the dark side.
Oh.
You know, Vader had all the answers. Okay, fine, fair enough.
All right.
I'm not the first to be misled by Obi-Wan. Just say that.
Nice save.
If it makes you feel better, I would get a 0 on this quiz.
Okay.
Okay, next.
Are these all sound effects quizzes?
No. A couple of sounds.
Okay, good.
And then
all right, so I just have to survive.
Then we have a couple of lines of dialogue from the commercials.
Oh God. Okay.
Okay, here's our next sound.
Snowspeeder?
No, I'll give you a hint. It's a character.
What?
It was a radio-controlled character.
Oh, I don't know. Was it? Well, it's either R2 or the land speed or the Sandcrawler. I don't have working versions of those, man. That's not fair. It's clearly something droid-related.
Ding, 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 ding.
There we go.
R2-D2 is correct.
Is that really what it sounds like?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Well, I can beat that, though. Have you ever heard the Palatoy large-size R2-D2?
No.
So the Kenner large R2-D2, most people are familiar with. It's the large plastic R2, and you press a little button on the front, and the little hatch opens in the back, and there are the plans to the Death Star. The British version was produced by Palatoy, and instead of the little hatch, when you press the button, it plays a tiny little record inside of it. It's the same technology they used for those toys where it was like, the cow goes moo, those type of things.
Wow.
And it talks. And it does a few different things. It makes the whistling R2 noises, like, okay, that makes sense. But then it also says in a British accent, I am R2-D2. So there's that.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway, all right, let's continue this embarrassment. Hit me with the next one.
Moving right along.
Okay.
R2-D2, where are you?
Okay, that's the troop transporter. That's my all-time favorite toy.
Ding, 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 ding,
Well, my
ding.
all-time favorite Star Wars toy, I should say.
You guys
that
have
is
a lot.
the toy that I loved as a kid because, whereas most things, it's like, oh, I have this C-3PO action figure, and it's kind of like having this little representation of Star Wars in my home. But when you had the troop transport and you press that button, you could hear the character actually talk. It was like having this piece of the movie literally in your living room. I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And when it turns out, actually, in the film we interviewed Tom Troy, who designed the thing, and I didn't know that at first. When I first met him, way before the interview, I met him at Celebration. I didn't know that was his background. And when my friend who introduced me, a guy named Josh Blake, when he told me this is the guy who came up with the troop transport, my jaw just hit the floor. It was like, man, I mean, I couldn't think of anyone cooler for me to meet because that toy was it.
Yeah,
So,
for me, it expanded the Star Wars universe.
yeah, and the funny thing is, though, as a kid, I didn't quite, I knew it wasn't in the movie. It didn't seem odd to me that they would make something not part of the movie And it didn't seem significant to me the way it did to you, where you kind of recognized, wow, this is expanding things. And maybe I was a little too young to fully make that connection. I just thought the thing was awesome.
It came with a little comic, and I was obsessed with the Star Wars Marvel comics at the time, so I just connected the two, the comics from the toy to the Marvel comics to the movie. So, of course, it all fits into the Star Wars world. Therefore, I accepted it without prejudice.
I didn't even remember the comic until I got the toy again. I don't know, a year or so ago. I finally got a really nice boxed example that came with the comic. And I was thrilled because that's the scene that you never see in the movie of the sandcrawler getting taken out by the stormtroopers.
Right.
So it's like this key moment that we finally are privy to, and it's vicious. This is a thing they packaged for little kids. The death of these Jawas. I was like, this is just awesome.
I remember Darth Vader yelling at the stormtroopers, "Come back with those droids or don't come back at all." Like, oh, Vader,
well,
come on, give him a break. All right, so now these next couple of questions are key lines from the commercials for either toys or play sets or vehicles.
So I have to name the
you have to name
figure, play set, or vehicle?
Yeah,
yes.
Or what it is that they're advertising.
Okay.
All right, roll it.
You won't escape me. Jump, Luke! Oh no! The trash compactor! There's a trash monster! The wall's closing!
Well, clearly that's for the Dianoga or the Death Star playset.
There you go. The trash monster gave it away.
Yeah. Well, in the jump, Luke, jump. I was like, okay, it's either that or, I don't know, maybe a Sarlacc pit or something, but they didn't make that, so.
Okay, next.
Spring glide wheels! The Force goes with us! Yeah!
Because the Force does go with us.
Oh, the land speeder.
The land speeder is right, yeah. Right. But I just wanted that one because it said, the Force goes with us.
No, that's pretty good.
75 more to go.
Awesome. You can keep your $5, mister.
Well, you know what? I'm going to give you a point just for knowing that reference.
Thank you.
We get a lot of that around here. All right.
Okay, here we go.
Hang on, R2. I'm right behind you. Me too.
Oh, these are so funny.
Oh, something with Jawas?
Keep on going.
Ben after drinking too much?
That was from the Land of the Jawas playset.
Okay.
Last one.
Closed doors. Race tower. Activate ion cannon.
Well, either the Hoth World or the troop transport, the escape ship, big football.
You are right. That was the Hoth World Micro Collection.
Oh, that was the Micro Collection? I mean, yes, the Hoth World Micro Collection.
Wow, you must have watched Plastic Galaxy.
Oh, man. You know, anything that you figured, well, that was included, so he'll know this one. You clearly don't understand how fried my brain was by the end of that whole process. So,
now, speaking of Plastic Galaxy, where can people get your film?
They can get it through our website, which is plasticgalaxymovie.com, and there's a big honking button that'll let you purchase it. Although we'll be doing a whole different shipping and fulfillment system, so it'll no longer be coming out of my living room, which I'm sure my wife will be thrilled to hear.
Nice.
Well, Brian, thank you very, very much for your time. We really, really appreciate it. And we really appreciate you making Plastic Galaxy the story of Star Wars toys.
Well, I appreciate your having me on the show, man. It's a lot of fun.
Well, keep us posted on whatever else you have coming up. We'd love to hear about it.
Will do.
All right,
Thanks again, guys.
Take care, Brian. Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
I've got you now. Open speed flaps and mirror. I'm gonna crash. Biker Scout, you're not all you're cracked up to be.
In the past, Sean Crosby and I have had many conversations about the Kenner toys and how we both customized them while growing up.
So we thought it would also be fun to call him up and continue our vintage toy chat. Or actually, Richard and Obi-Shawn talked. I kind of listened.
Sarah was born in 81, so she kind of came in the middle of the whole Kenner toy run.
Yeah.
We are now talking to Sean Crosby, who can be seen at many conventions and charity events as Obi-Sean. Now, he's the one usually holding the Yoda puppet. Or you may have seen him zipping around LA in his H or Z-Wing fighter, which he converted from a Honda Civic. Now, we talked to you a few months ago during the Star Wars Holiday Special episode, and our conversation turned to Star Wars action figures. And recently you told me you had almost worked for Kenner. So what's the backstory there?
I did. Actually, I was working for a video game company at the time and in tech support, doing tech support for stuff like Diablo and Warcraft and a bunch of games nobody's ever heard of. And I thought, oh, you know, what I really want to do is make Star Wars toys, because I had been collecting all the new toys when they started coming out in '95. Mm-hmm. They started reissuing all these Star Wars toys for no apparent reason. And I thought, well, gosh, it'd be really great to go work for Kenner. That's my passion. I love making toys and I love playing with toys, modifying toys, and I love the Star Wars line. Let's see how far I get. So I started applying. I sent them my portfolio, and my resume was very cool. It was all printed on translucent paper backed with something else. It looked very sci-fi and spacey. And I sent this stuff over to them, and they just immediately called me and said, this would be tremendous. And we see that you have toy experience, because I'd worked for Mattel and for Playmates and for a number of other toy companies doing like Happy Meal toys and action figures and things like that. This is about 90, I want to say like 97 maybe.
Okay.
Something like that, because the new Star Wars toys had only been out for a little while, so like 96, 97. And when they contacted me, they said, well, yeah, you know, this would be great. We want you to come out to Cincinnati and check out our facility. And this is back when Kenner was still Kenner. And so I thought, oh my gosh, this would be terrific. And then I started talking to my friends. Like I have a friend who worked at Mattel. He also worked at Fisher-Price, and he also worked for Kenner. And he's got some great stories about taking all the R2-D2 remote control robots that they were making in the 70s and sending them out to play in traffic on the street out in front of Kenner. But he's like, oh my gosh, Cincinnati, are you sure? I mean, it is as far from Los Angeles in terms of climate and culture and everything as you can possibly get. Are you sure you want to go? And I said, well, I'll look into it. And so I'm talking with Kenner, and I'm looking into going to Cincinnati. And the more I look at Cincinnati, the less exciting it looks. But Star Wars, right? I would get to work on Star Wars toys. And so trying to balance this and talking to my wife and things, we finally kind of decided that we really, really didn't want to move to Cincinnati. And so I declined the job, and about a month later, Hasbro took over Kenner.
Oh.
They shut down the Cincinnati offices and moved everybody to Rhode Island.
Wow.
And so I kind of feel like I dodged a bullet. I mean, I feel sad not to have worked making Star Wars toys. It would have been amazing. And I love what Kenner is doing. Like right now is just amazing stuff. And in the past few years, since once they got past the He-Man kind of sculpt, they were really, really great toys. And I feel like on one hand, I missed an opportunity. On the other hand, I kind of dodged a bullet, because I'm like, Rhode Island, you know, it's just, I don't know, because I'm so ingrained into the Los Angeles, and it's a city I understand, and it's a city I'm very comfortable in. And I love visiting other cities, but I think I'll always probably come back here given the option.
I'm sure at this point you've already learned how to navigate the 405 freeway, so right there's a huge, huge undertaking for LA.
Well, why do you think I have guns on my car? Come on. I mean, I have R2-D2 in the back. I have cannons on the side. It helps.
So when we last talked, you had said that you used to customize action figures. When you were a kid, what action figures did you customize into the figures that weren't made?
Well, okay, one of the things that made me kind of an uber geek back in the 70s when Star Wars came out is I used to play chess. And I always found the game kind of really interesting to begin with, but I never really found a chess set that I liked. There were things like, Civil War soldiers and things like that. And they were all small, tiny pieces, and just couldn't really get into them. But once I saw Star Wars and there was this big battle thing going on, I decided, hey, I can make a Star Wars chess set. And so I got a bunch of rebel pilots, and those were the pawns on the rebel side, a bunch of stormtroopers on the other side, because we didn't have TIE fighter pilots yet. So just stormtroopers were the pawns on the other ones. But in order to get things to really kind of match the movie, I had to start fussing with things like there was no Grand Moff Tarkin figure to be the king on the Imperial side, because Vader obviously was going to be the queen. The most powerful piece on the board was going to like mop up the board with Darth Vader. But there was no Grand Moff Tarkin figure. They didn't do, Peter Cushing toys at that point. So, I had to go out and get like a Han Solo figure and start claying up his chest and resculpting his face and his hair and repainting him up and making my own Grand Moff Tarkin figure. And that was probably what really started me on doing custom figures. And then the ships were always amazing. And I haven't customized a lot of figures in the past couple of years, but what I still do is I still repaint the ships that come out. And in fact, at this time, one of the things that sold me on Kenner when I was applying for the job at Kenner is my wife had given me, and this shows true love, she had given me the reissue of the Millennium Falcon when it came out in like 95, 96, 97. And that was for our anniversary. She managed to hide it for months and months and months behind
Got a
the
good
couch.
woman there.
Yeah, it was great. So I took this Millennium Falcon, completely disassembled it, got all the reference pictures I possibly could of the ILM models, and even though the toy is sort of wildly inaccurate because the cockpit's too big and all that kind of stuff, I actually took this ship and I repainted it to match the ILM models. And then I had taken photographs of this and an X-Wing I had done and some other Star Wars things. I had sent those along to Kenner as sort of proof of skill. And they were really excited by that. But this Millennium Falcon model, which I still have, it's absolutely gorgeous as far as a toy goes, because it looks just like the model that ILM built. This one we actually brought, and you remember the film Fanboys?
Oh yeah.
So there's a scene in Fanboys where there's a Mexican standoff, is what they usually call it, where everybody's got something they're going to destroy in George Lucas's office. And the main character, Linus, is holding a Millennium Falcon over his head. That's this Falcon, the one that I painted, because somebody brought one of the sort of, $3,500 collector models that I don't know, Sideshow or somebody made that was just gorgeous, very, very expensive. And they wanted him to do the same thing. And the guy who owned the model's like, there's no way he's holding that over his head. If he drops it, we're toast. And so I said, well, hey, look, this is just a, $35, $45 Kenner toy. I mean, it's got sentimental value because my wife gave it to me. But if you drop it, I'm not going to be crushed because it's just a Kenner toy. And so that's what we ended up using. And my Yoda puppet's in the same scene, and there's my toys and stuff are all over the walls because they wanted to populate George Lucas's office with models. And of course, they shot it in Pasadena, in the same place that they shot Dalton Academy for Glee. So if you ever watch Glee and you've seen the Dalton Academy guys dancing and singing in this cool wood building, that's the same thing.
I never really knew about customizing action figures until I opened up Monster Magazine. I think it was an issue from 1978 when they were doing a contest asking people to build dioramas and take pictures, and someone had repainted a Death Squad commander to look like a rebel trooper on the blockade runner. And I thought, oh my goodness, just by painting his helmet and getting a Darth Vader vinyl cape, cutting it in half so it's his vest, you have a whole new action figure. And my world just opened up from there. And soon I was cutting off Luke Skywalker's head and gluing him on a stormtrooper body. It's like, oh, suddenly collect all 21 as no bearing, because now you can collect whatever you want, because you can just make your own action figures.
Well, exactly. And the thing that was funny, there was nothing at the time that I had access to that had clued me in that this was a thing, that people were actually out there doing this. And we were building dioramas in school. And so I think I recreated the cantina and populated it with action figures. I was 10 when Star Wars came out. So, dioramas were the big thing. And everyone else is doing like, oh, I'm doing the Hardy Boys, or I'm doing, whatever. And... And so I did, I'm doing the cantina, and populated it with all my action figures.
Hardy boys.
And I was a little rough on my toys, too. I mean, there were times where we'd be out playing and we would take, like, Luke Skywalker or Han Solo, and we'd strap him to a skateboard and send him down the hill. You know, we'd race our guys, but we had to have them populated while we did it. So, you know, Han and Luke would be on the skateboard, and once you hit a rock and the thing turned over, you know, you'd have like a Han Solo with half of his face sanded off, but that was perfect to make Dr. Evazan, right? The clothes were about the same, and he was missing half of his face.
Oh, funny.
So it's like, hey, perfect, no worries. And so, you know, you had to kind of have a lackadaisical attitude with your toys. I still have 12 original Star Wars figures from the original release, and this is something I've wanted to do for a while. I want to make a little display where they're back to back with their modern day counterparts, just to show how the sculpts have changed over 6 years.
Yeah.
And I thought that would be kind of fun, but I still have the what are basically the birthday cake figures from that Star Wars 1 year old today poster.
Yes.
Plus the Jawa, which was never included.
Plus the Jawa, which wasn't he the candle? Didn't they just light him on fire for the candle?
Oh.
Did you ever see the magazine? I think it was like Family Circle or Woman's Day or something that had a build a science fiction play set.
Yes, I did.
Basically, it was how to build all this great stuff. And they have something like 8 or 10 vinyl cape Jawas, and you can show that to any collector, and they're like,
they opened up those figures. How could they?
How funny.
Where was their foresight in 1978?
I know. If only we had a time machine, right? Go back to our former selves and go, hey, kid, don't open that baggage. What's with you crazy old man? Of course I'm going to open that bag.
I remember that article. My grandmother used to read Family Circle, and she came in running in one day. Look, Richard, look! And I never gave her back that issue. Nope, this is mine. I can't believe it. You can build Star Wars toys. You can customize figures. You can build Star Wars toys.
Did you cross out the WO on the cover, though, so it said Men's Day, and it was all more manly?
Yes, I did. Yep.
Now, Sean, you were talking about your those Star Wars toys. What would you consider your oldest Star Wars collectible?
Well, golly. I mean, the absolutely oldest Star Wars collectible I have to get maudlin and lame is the memory of seeing Star Wars, which I saw the second day it opened at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood.
Oh, wow.
My mom saw it the first day kind of by accident to kill time, waiting for my dad, who was working in Hollywood. And she came home and she said, come straight home from school tomorrow. We're going somewhere.
Your life is about to change.
And that was it. Well, I'm pretty sure she didn't think of it that way. I think they were all very disappointed that I took Star Wars so much to heart because, our family was a lot more sports oriented. And, it pretty much didn't get any geekier than Star Wars. And not like the sports kids didn't go see it too, but they didn't want to, dress up as a Jawa for Halloween, which I think I did that first year. I made my own Jawa costume. I cannibalized flashlights to make the glowing eyeballs. It's a terrible costume. I have it as a Polaroid.
Oh, really?
From the time period. And oh my gosh, it's awful. It was like the worst thing ever.
You know what? But can you send us that? We'd love to use it.
I guess so. But you know what's really funny is that, and I don't have like all the costume on. I don't have the gloves on and things like that. But the thing that's funny, I think the only thing we had for reference was the Jawa action figure. And because it's exactly that color. It looks nothing like the Jawa from the movie. It totally looks like the Jawa action figure. And that's what's really kind of bizarre. So I think we must have had the figure, and I handed it to my mom. And my mom was terrific at sewing, and all my costume skills I think I get genetically from her, because she would I'd like walk in and go, I think I want to be Batman for Halloween. And she would sew a perfect Adam West Batman costume for me.
Wow.
In my scale, which was just amazing.
Yeah, my grandmother was the same way. If I said I wanted a Batman cape, she'd make me a Batman cape. I wanted a burlap Yoda robe. She made me a burlap Yoda robe.
Yeah, and it's nice to kind of keep that going, but that can also backfire on you. Like there was a picture of some party that my mom and my stepdad went to, and he wore a Santa Claus costume inexplicably. And my mom dressed as Wonder Woman because that was like the hot thing at the time. And you kind of don't want to see your mom dressed as Linda Carter. You're like, don't go there, please.
Oh,
and
funny.
and it's not that she looked bad, and that's the problem. It's like,
All right,
man.
you can stop there before our therapist steps in.
Ways you never want to see your mom. There you go.
Now, Sean, you were talking about how you made your own, sculpted your own toys. But as a kid, was there a toy that you wanted but was never made?
Well, I would have rather that they made the Skyhopper, and I think that's probably the ship I wish they would have made. They inevitably did make a Skyhopper for the Power of the Force line.
Yeah.
But I always wanted one as a kid because I saw Luke playing with the model of the Skyhopper in the garage. And if you look in the garage past C-3PO and R2-D2, there's an open door, and the Skyhopper is sitting there in the garage. And Lord knows how it got out of that garage. It would have to have like some kind of hole, or the roof would have to open up James Bond style or something to get this thing out.
Plus, they used it in the Marvel comics a lot. They had a couple of issues featuring Luke piloting his Skyhopper where they did the flashback issues.
Right, they did. And they do the whole Beggar's Canyon thing and the Stone Needle and whatever. And I always thought that ship for me, the land speeder was great. It was Luke's beater car. The Skyhopper was his hot rod, and I wanted that. I wanted it desperately. And in fact, I have one over here on my shelf that I have repainted to match the movie model. It's always been one of my favorite things.
In the days when you dream about escaping from Los Angeles, you pick it up and fly it around like the way Luke did?
Well, and at the time Star Wars came out, I was living in Simi Valley, and Simi Valley is about as rural as you get in Southern California without actually living in the high desert. And so, Luke's story really kind of resonated with me a lot. I mean, we all kind of wanted to bail out and go be adventuring anywhere but Simi Valley.
Have you ever customized or kit bashed any model kits to make your own H or Z-Wing car, like the car that you have?
Actually, I have planned to do it, but it's been a little tough. Somebody was kind enough to give me a Honda del Sol model, which is what my first car was based off of. And when planning the second car, I actually went out and bought a 1/18th scale die-cast Nissan 350Z, which is what my current car is based off of and why it's called the Z-Wing. So I do have plans to inevitably turn those into my version of the car with various model kit parts and things like that.
All right. Well, Sean, thank you very much for your time. It was very interesting talking to another Star Wars Kenner collector.
Hey, my pleasure, guys. It's great to talk to you.
You too.
Right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
So we want to thank everyone for listening to Skywalking Through Neverland and telling a friend about our podcast.
Absolutely. And those reviews, they really help out. In fact, we were excited this week to see on Stitcher Radio 2 new reviews pop up. One from Design Queen. She says, extraordinary fun for Star Wars and Disney fans.
Oh, thanks, Design Queen.
Yeah. And, she mentions that it's very professionally done with great graphics and excellent sound quality. Well,
Go Radio Shack.
Just Radio Shack? Or my graphic design skills?
Yeah.
Okay. I know, I'm just kidding. All right, and then also, another review is from TMSM Avenger. And he writes...
Or she.
Or she, yeah, absolutely. They write, best podcast I've heard in a very long time.
You can stop there, and I'm happy.
That is Richard's whole goal. Aww. So yeah, this is one of the best podcasts I've listened to in years. This one is fun and keeps you interested through it all. I just found with episode 16, but plan to go back and listen to them all. Congrats on a great show. Well, thank you, TMSM Avenger. We are here for you.
And we are here once again for all fans. So if you have made a fan film, if you have written fan fiction, or if you just want to show off your new cosplay costume, well, send us pictures and let us know about you.
Absolutely. And also, if you want to be just on a short segment to talk about something
that you're really passionate about.
Yeah. Or you just want to talk to us about an issue that we'd like to discuss. We always welcome new input.
Not only do we have the podcast, but we have a Facebook page that keeps you very up to date with the news and what's going on in the world of Star Wars and Disney and pop culture fandom. And being a big fan of history, I'll put up on our Facebook page this day in Star Wars history.
Yeah.
Not only are they fun facts, but they could come in handy when you want to show your street cred. You're at a convention and someone says, "Hey, you know what? When did the NPR Empire Strikes Back radio show debut?" And you can say, "Hello, February 14th, 1983. I'm just saying.
They'll look at you in awe.
I'm just saying. It could come in very handy.
Yes. So join us on Facebook and join the conversation.
Now, speaking of fan films, and in honor of this week's release of the RoboCop remake, segment producer Marco Gushewitz dug up an LA Times promo he directed starring the RoboCop action figure.
Ooh.
Now, this was at a time about 15 years ago when LA Times would have all these promos about one thing, but then in the end, they would just tack up their logo.
Wait, so LA Times on their website?
No, they were in front of a movie.
Okay.
And then in the end, it would say LA Times, the newspaper here in LA. One really had nothing to do with the other, unless it was just showing what the LA Times is printing for the news.
Okay.
So Mark did a parody of this using the RoboCop action figure. Now let's connect the dots here. There was an action figure of RoboCop. Now this is before they were considered collectibles. These were meant for young kids.
Okay.
RoboCop was rated R. They're making toys of RoboCop. And back in the late 80s, a lot of R-rated movies like Rambo had dolls, rated R. The Toxic Avenger, rated R.
Really?
Yeah. So Mark had an issue with that, so he made a very, very fun parody of that. Check it out.
Sure, the job consists of mainly playing with kids, but it's not all fun and games. Every time I enter the field, I'm pretty much putting my life on the line.
Die! What you say?
The job of an action figure is to make the kids want to see movies so badly that they will do anything to get their parents to take them to see it.
I want to see RoboCop. I want to see RoboCop. No. I want to see RoboCop. Please, please, I want to see RoboCop. 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 I said no. I want to see RoboCop.
Most people consider RoboCop to be an extremely violent film. Some even consider it an extremely bloody film. But can anyone honestly say that they know of a kid who has not seen RoboCop? I didn't think so. And that's because of the thousands of action figures out there doing their job successfully.
We want to welcome back Joey Pittman with his review of the new Disney comic he had gotten at Wizard World a couple of weeks ago called Disney's Seekers of the Weird. And this is his review of issue number 1. Now, normally we would do the whole 4-issue arc in one segment, but I thought this was such a unique, interesting comic that I wanted to tell people about it now so they can go out and get it for themselves and keep up with issues 2, 3, and 4.
And actually, each issue is selling out, so we wanted you guys to be aware beforehand.
Now that they're reprinting them, they all have variant covers.
Mm-hmm.
So for the collectors, get them now.
Yep, it's Disney. It's a collectible.
Hey, Joey. Thank you once again for joining us on Skywalking Through Neverland. Now, when you were at Wizard World a couple of weeks ago, you had told us about this really cool comic you had gotten called Disney's Seekers of the Weird. So can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, it just came out. It's part of this new Disney and Marvel collaboration called Disney Kingdoms. And basically what it is producers, directors, Imagineers coming together with Marvel writers and coming up with new comics based on rides, lands, characters. So the first one, it just came out, was Seekers of the Weird, which is based off the Museum of the Weird Disney fans will know of it as one of the original concepts for Haunted Mansion.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, it when you read the first issue, some of the artwork you see will be like the coffin clock, which is still in the Haunted Mansion, the number 13 clock that you see down the hallway.
Yep, that's still there.
The first issue focuses on a brother and sister, Melody and Maxwell. And Melody is kind of like the athletic jock. Maxwell's a loner outcast. And their family owns a artifacts kind of store in New Orleans. A lot of weird stuff.
Kind of like Borgin and Burke's from Diagon Alley in Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Curiosity shop.
There you go. Exactly.
All right.
So basically, they help run the store, but in the first issue, when they're trying to tell their parents about their grades, they got the report cards, and their folks are acting really weird. And at night, their parents get kidnapped by the artifacts.
Oh.
There's a bunch of taxidermy, bears with wings and stuff, and they get taken. Then all of a sudden, kind of very similar to like the scene in Jumanji where Robin Williams comes back to the game, their uncle comes in. Kind of, heroic. Uncle Roland, he's actually based on Rolly Crump, the original guy that came up and worked with Walt Disney on the Museum of the Weird.
Oh, nice insider reference.
Oh, yeah. So it was a nice little tribute to him. And he also, I guess, had a lot of insight on the comic, worked with the Imagineers and the writers on this.
So now the kids have to go and find their parents?
They got to find their parents and their uncle. I don't want to give away too much of the story because it's really exciting. Their house is part of the store. They're upstairs. And they're never allowed in the study. So their uncle breaks into the study, and it's this huge, even bigger museum style of stuff with a vault. You go into the vault, and it's almost like a portal where once they get inside, it looks like the entrance of what would probably be like the mansion.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so the first issue is really just setting up the characters and where the story's going to go. I believe it's 4 to 5 issues, with only the first issue came out.
Okay, is it a monthly?
Yeah, I believe the next issue comes out the 19th of this month.
But then they'll begin another storyline using another Disney ride or attraction?
Characters that are lesser known characters, probably from attractions. There's not a whole lot of information about it yet, other than that it's Marvel working clearly with Disney Resorts, Imagineers, and storytellers. The writing is great. The writer is Brandon Seifert. He's known for many comics. I think it's going to be a very good line down the road for Disney and Marvel.
So it's kind of like if Indiana Jones had kids, and the kids are junior adventurers, and they're following in the footsteps when push comes to shove, and now they're off on their own adventure.
Yeah, and which is really funny because like the boy, Maxwell, he's really wimpy. And so the sister, Melody, she's kind of, so far looks like she might be the hero of the story.
And did it leave you wanting more, or did it leave you going in?
Oh, definitely. I'm not a huge comic reader. I mean, I'll anything that looks interesting, but this is probably one of the more interesting ones I've read in the last couple years.
Now, were there any hidden Mickeys anywhere?
Truthfully, I didn't even look. I was really focused on trying to recognize artwork from like the Haunted Mansion and sketches I've seen throughout the years, and there's a lot of statues, and like I mentioned, the coffin, this the candle man that Rolly Crump's talked about a lot, which he's kind of like the hourglass. They got to find the parents before the candle man burns out.
All right. You can't go wrong when dealing with the Haunted Mansion.
Oh, not at all.
And doing a whole comic series around that is truly fascinating. I'm just hoping it's going to be better than the Eddie Murphy Haunted Mansion movie.
Well, the one issue is so far way better than that movie.
Nice.
I know that the first print has already sold out
wow.
from the distributors. They're reprinting the original cover, which will be slightly different. So if anybody bought the first issue and the number of variants, if they're into the value, those will go up. But I know Marvel and Disney are pretty excited about the early success and word of mouth so far.
All right, Joey. Well, thank you very much.
All right. Yeah, you guys have a good day.
You too.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Hit it, R2.
Star Wars is everywhere.
My name, is C-3PO.
Kellogg's C-3POs.
Oh, no! You're Vader! Who? I'm a teenage
this week on our vintage video segment, well, Richard, you're in charge of that. What do we have?
Well, we're going to continue our Kenner theme here by showing you the Kenner Super commercial.
Ooh.
This was the commercial that many of you have seen because it played during the Star Wars Holiday Special, and many of you who saw the bootleg of the, well, it's the only way really to see it after the initial run in 78, but this video bootleg also includes this Kenner Super commercial.
That was permanently recorded.
So a lot of people have seen the commercial where R2 and 3PO announce all these new Kenner toys that are coming up.
Yeah.
And a lot of these sounds you're about to hear, you have just heard during our Kenner vintage quiz we did with Brian Stillman.
So did your head explode as a little boy watching this commercial?
Oh, it did. I was very excited, even for the electronic Star Wars battle game.
Mm-hmm.
I had it. I don't think I read the directions, so I never really knew how to play.
I don't think you read the directions either.
No, I don't read directions. But it made all these flashing sounds, and if you hit the button just right, the middle Death Star explodes. So it wasn't my favorite toy.
Uh-huh.
But had the logo on it, so I was super excited to have it.
Oh.
And now, listen up as R2 and 3PO shows us through the Kenner vintage video.
You and your children loved it. Now, the Earthlings at Kenner have asked my associate and me to present the Star Wars collection. Truly remarkable toys and games for your children. What are you so excited about now? My goodness, the Star Wars TIE Fighter and X-Wing fighter. Now your children can relive our great space battles or collect our wonderful Star Wars companions with Kenner's Star Wars action figures. R2, it's a little you. Kenner's new radio-controlled R2-D2 anyone can command. Ah, the Star Wars land speeder that moves like it's floating. And here's Kenner's Death Star space station, 4 floors of action. A trash compactor, too. Listen, R2, that's the Star Wars electronic laser battle, a game of speed, reflex, and reaction. These and other toys and games in Kenner's Star Wars collection are sold separately. Batteries are not included. May the Force be with you and your children.
Countdown time.
Now, this is the part of the show which makes you realize how fast time really is going by.
Mm-hmm.
This is the countdown to a lot of upcoming stuff we have here.
Mm-hmm. Celebration Anaheim.
Yes. Or some people may call it still Celebration 7. I bring this up because I still consider the very first Star Wars convention for the 10th anniversary, I'm going to dub that Star Wars Celebration 0, which I was in attendance to.
Okay.
And I was also very lucky to have a friend who had a video camera who recorded the whole convention, including George Lucas's very first convention appearance.
Wow.
The man did not look comfortable at all.
Oh.
But before he came out, we were treated to a very special surprise. I don't know how they kept us under wraps, but they did. And now, take a listen to what we saw before George Lucas.
You don't suppose we landed in the wrong time zone? R2-D2, what are you doing? How many times have I told you not to speak to strangers? Well, they look strange to me. Now, I suppose I had better speak to them. Pardon me for asking, but has anyone here seen George Lucas? No! Oh, dear. I think something is going terribly wrong. What? I have a very bad feeling about this.
So are you excited yet for Celebration Anaheim?
So the lights went out, and you heard R2-D2 beeping. You heard Anthony Daniels as C-3PO. Lights came up, and there were the droids, the screen-used droids, right there on stage in front of us. The place went ballistic.
Oh.
Including me, because they were now here. They were now here right in front of you. So every week when we do the countdown, we'll play a little bit more of that very first George Lucas appearance, including the R2 and 3PO, which you just heard. And then after R2 and 3PO, we had another special guest. Not going to tell you who it was. Oh, but hold on. We didn't tell you how many more days.
No, we didn't. I was just going to mention that.
How many more days until Celebration Anaheim?
Holding your breath, 421 days.
As of February 17th.
Yay.
Then, a little while later, we have Star Wars Episode 7.
Woohoo! And there are 669 days.
And once again, that is as of the 17th of February. Now, the more recent, the only recent news to come out of Star Wars Episode 7 has been the shooting dates.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not shooting dates, but the shooting time period, which is going to be at Pinewood Studios, May through September.
Not Elstree?
Not Elstree, and I hear on a lot of sites, why aren't they going to Elstree? And no one has an answer. No one but us.
What's the answer?
Because we have an insight. When we went on our honeymoon and visited Elstree, we made a very good contact over there.
Mm-hmm.
And I had asked our friend over there, her name is Joe, why isn't Star Wars coming to Elstree? And she said, the studios were already booked up. Well, whoever's shooting in there, get out.
Mm-hmm.
Get out now.
Get out so we can get in.
Yeah. But we want to see Star Wars coming back home to Elstree Studios.
Yeah.
Bring Star Wars back to where it belongs. All right, so moving right along to Rebels, which we still don't have a date for, but we do know that the movie and the shorts are coming out this summer.
Yes, and news has been flying in this week.
First, we were introduced to Chopper, the little astromech droid.
Yep.
Then, we were introduced to Kanan.
Yeah, this Valentine's Day was kind of like Star Wars gave a gift to all the Star Wars fans. So,
thank you, Disney.
Yeah. So Kanan is a Jedi voiced by Freddie Prinze Jr. And
many of you know him as Fred from the Scooby-Doo movies. And then again, many of you don't.
Yeah, I don't. Kanan is described as a Jedi who has been on the down low since the events of Revenge of the Sith.
I would think he would be kept on the down low.
Yeah, because he's a Jedi.
You're not going to last that long.
No, he's not. So he keeps his lightsaber under lock and key and brandishes a blaster instead to avoid the attention of the Empire.
Now, what would Obi-Wan say if he caught Kanan with a blaster?
I don't know.
So uncivilized.
Rebels executive producer Dave Filoni calls Kanan a cowboy Jedi.
I'm kind of getting the feeling they're rolling Han Solo and Luke Skywalker into one character.
Yeah, absolutely.
With Kanan. And for many of you who live in the LA area, when we hear the word Kanan, we just think of the big street that goes from Malibu up to the 101 freeway. Now, that came from USA Today, but on SeattlePI.com, we got privy to another character. This character's name is Ezra.
Ezra? If it's Ezra, that's just odd. It's too earthly.
I'm not liking the name Ezra. I'm hoping it's not going to be Ezra. But he is a suave, charismatic teenager con artist who has been living on his own on the new planet of Lothal. and is just starting to learn how to use his mysterious new powers.
Ooh.
And then, of course, every now and then when he's in a jam, he's going to use the Force, which he doesn't call the Force. He just calls his powers.
Huh.
It'd be really funny if you just call it my midichlorians. I'm going to use the midichlorians. And
My middies.
Someone says, you mean the Force? No, I'm going to use the midichlorians. What's the Force?
That was Richard's phone.
Which I forgot to turn off. So now, speaking of Star Wars animated shows, there's been news about the Clone Wars, which I'm very excited about.
Finally.
Yes. The 6th and final season of Star Wars The Clone Wars, dubbed The Lost Missions, will be available exclusively on Netflix starting on March the 7th.
Ooh, happy birthday to me.
So if you need to get a hold of us on March the 7th, don't call us. We will not be answering.
No, we're going to subscribe to Netflix for that day.
13 new episodes will premiere along with the past 5 seasons, director's cuts, and the feature film.
Wow.
Now, Netflix has been known to put up all their episodes all at once, like Arrested Development. So what I'm getting is they're not going to wait week to week. They're going to do them all at once.
Yeah.
Which I don't want to binge watch these.
I know.
I want to savor them.
Yeah.
And finally, we're going to get to see something about Master Sifo-Dyas.
Ooh.
Yeah, they left us hanging with episode 2 and just bringing him up that he had ordered the clones and then just died.
That's true.
So, well, we want more information on this. I know he was mentioned in the Darth Plagueis novel.
That's right.
And he could have been mentioned in the Expanded Universe. I'm not a big Expanded Universe reader, so I don't know. This will be official continuity. Of course, that may all change once
once our
Disney
new
gets
friends
all
arrive.
everything settled to what they want to do.
Yeah.
So we are looking forward to the Clone Wars on March the 7th. And as Sarah just mentioned, her birthday's on the 10th. Well, I'm sure we'll have watched them all by the 10th.
Well, possibly.
Yeah, I know I say now I want to take them one at a time, but that ain't going to happen.
Thank you for joining us on Skywalking Through Neverland.
Once again, please send us your fan films, your fan fiction, cosplaying pictures. If you have an interesting topic, let us know about it.
Yeah, hit us up on Facebook. Facebook.com/SkywalkingThroughNeverland. Remember, Skywalking Through Neverland is available on iTunes, YouTube, and now Stitcher Radio.
And like always, we ask you to please write us a review.
That would really be awesome.
Because the more stars we get, the more reviews we get, the higher up on their list we get. And once again, we are here to spotlight you, the fans. So last week, we had mentioned that we were going to do a Facebook giveaway. And so far, how many people have entered?
I think we have like over 300 entries.
300 entries, but only one of you can win the Mickey ears, the mini ears, the classic Mickey ears, or the R2-D2 ears. And so far, those are the favorites.
The R2-D2 ears?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely the favorites. And you can enter once per day. So go on our Facebook page once per day and go to the giveaway tab and enter. And we would really appreciate it if you share with your friends.
And you have until Monday, the 24th of February at midnight.
Yes.
Coming up next week on Skywalking Through Neverland on Tiki Cantina, we talk to Trisha Barr of Fangirls Going Rogue and Robert Babst of the Bald Solo Podcast. Now, we talk about how the expanded universe may be, for lack of a better word, deleted when the new films come. When the new films are produced, but what characters will make the transition to the big screen, and we really wanted to hear from Robert and Trisha what characters and situation they wanted to see go from the pages to the screen, and they gave a lot of really nice insight. So that's going to be a really fun conversation. And next week at this time, we're going to be running through Disney World.
That's right, at the Princess Half Marathon. I'll be doing the Glass Slipper Challenge.
So we look forward to coming back and sharing with you all the experiences.
Yeah. Wish me luck.
In my experience, there's no such thing as luck.
Good luck.
Thanks. And remember, Neverland on Alderaan. Thank you for listening to Skywalking Through Neverland. We would love to hear what you thought of the show. Please send feedback and suggestions. You can email us at share@skywalkingthroughneverland.com. Please visit us at our website, skywalkingthroughneverland.com. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/skywalkingthroughnneverland and on Twitter at skywalkingpod. All material submitted becomes the property of Skywalking Through Neverland and are subject for use on our show. You can help support Skywalking Through Neverland by posting about us on Facebook, Twitter, or just tell another fanboy or girl. We would also really appreciate a 5-star review on iTunes. A link to our iTunes page can be found on skywalkingthroughneverland.com. Skywalking Through Neverland was created and produced by Richard and Sarah Woloski. Segment producers are David Scale, Richard Woloski, Sarah Woloski, and Mark Agushowitz. Graphic design and website design by Sarah Woloski. Technical advisor is Peter Heitman. Skywalking Through Neverland is not affiliated with Lucasfilm Limited, Disneyland Resorts, or the Walt Disney Company. All names, sounds, and related items of Star Wars and Disney are registered, trademarked, and copyright Lucasfilm Limited and the Walt Disney Company and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All rights reserved. Skywalking Through Neverland is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Hey Hey Entertainment, copyright 2013, all rights reserved. No part of this show may be repurposed, reproduced, redistributed, or rebroadcasted without the written permission of Hey Hey Entertainment.
Sorry, all that had to be said.
Goodbye. Live long and prosper. Wait, sorry. May the Force be with you.
And cut. That's a wrap.